Over to you.
Assalamu alaikum, everybody. Um, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My talk today is Women Equal Partners of Men. We have a lot of preconceptions, a wrong one, some right one, depending on where we grow up in Muslim country, non-Muslim country, in Indian or Pakistani culture. So we bring with us our culture and our surrounding with us. So where we are born, it has a big impact on how we see things in life. But to understand what Quran is saying, then we have to look at Quran singularly and not mix anything else with the Quran. So today I'm going to look at women that I believe that Allah has said clearly in the Quran that they are equal partners of men. So I'm going to try to explain the common misconceptions in this regard. So I will start with the topics which I have chosen. The idea was to contain myself within 1 hour. Inshallah, I will try. The first is the creation of human race. Both men and women are created at the same time, not one before the other. Both men and women are equal as human beings. Women share in inheritance, marriage and divorce, illicit relations, and there are a few couple of verses in the Quran which are grossly misinterpreted in favor of men. So I have isolated them separately because to understand them correctly, you have to have the idea of what Allah is saying in the rest of the Quran. As you know, to understand Quran, you have to go through the Tasrif al-Ayat. You have to see on any subject what Allah has said elsewhere. And if you can understand that, then you can understand a verse. Singularly, if you look at verse only and without the context or rest of the book, sometimes things are difficult to understand. And then there is conclusion. The most important thing which I want to present is the creation of human race. Both men and women were created at the same time, not one before the other. Our standard story is the Adam and Eve story, where it is said that God made Adam from clay, and then he made him to a man, and then this man was living in heaven, and then he was lonely, and God wanted to give him companionship, and so God created Eve or Hawa from his rib, and then and at least in our people say, oh, rib because it is bent, so the woman is always bent. The thing is, this story maybe it has some biblical roots, but is definitely false and not correct. And Quran does not support that at all. That Adam was created singularly and then Eve was made from his rib and all that stuff. If I look at Quran, Surah Nisa, verse number 1, is clearly spells out exactly how man and woman were created. It says, Ya ayyuhan nas attaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahidatin. O mankind, cautiously follow guidance from your provider who has created you from a single being. Now here the word used is nafsan wahida. If you see nafsan wahida, it's a feminine gender, and therefore the first being cannot be a male gender because the first being, whatever form it was nafsan wahida means a female gender. Male gender, if it was, then they will say nafsan wahid. But of course, if you know Arabic, you know that when something is minuscule or very, very small, then for that they always use feminine gender. So what God is saying that the single being which was created by Allah right from the beginning was very, very small, which we know that it was single cell animals, so single cells were there, and they were self-dividing. And then at one stage, you can even know that then they started dividing as pairs, and then you needed a pair to form the next cell. So that's what God is saying here. وَخَلَقْ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا. And from that single cell, God made her or his pair, or its pair, you can say, and created it in its mate. Then Allah says that what minhuma rajalan kasira wa nisa. And then from both of them spread many men and women. So the men and women spread at the same time, not men before and women later, or women before and men later. They were all together created at the same time because they evolved like that. And therefore, initial creation does not give superiority to one gender or the other. And there is another, rest of the verse is also critical and very important, because this verse, I will talk about 4:2 and 4:3 later on, because this understanding is necessary to see where we have misconceptions in 4:3 in multiple marriages, that what God is saying, that you are all created as one. And therefore, this verse continues, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَأَلُونَ بِهِ وَأَرْحَامٍ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلِيمًا رَقِيبًا. Cautiously follow Allah's guidance in asking for your rights from kith and kin, because this word arham, in English there is another word which is translates this, is called uterine relatives, means people who have a common uterus, and so they are very close relatives to each other. They are called uterine. But God has here said the whole humanity is uterine because they started in the same way. So there is no difference in one and the other, and therefore you should take care of the rights of everybody. Is your kith and kin. Doesn't matter where he or she is born or what race she belongs to. And also you give them rights and you expect rights from them. And Allah watches over them. So this is critical to understand, that humanity is one nation. This is what Allah has said elsewhere in Surah Al-Baqarah. It says, Khana nas ummatan wahidatan, because the whole humanity, God says, was one nation. And this could also be pronounced as Kanna nas ummatan wahidatan, that humanity is one nation. There are subtle differences in how you pronounce in Arabic, but generally they say Kana means it is in the past, but it is also in a way it means present. But nevertheless, if they were in the past, they can be again together. So then how, as here says in the surah, in the first verse I mentioned, Bat minhuma rajalan kasira wa nisa. In Surah Al-Baqarah also God says, no, this 53, I don't remember which surah it is, but and Allah created two equal parts of a pair, the male and the female. وَإِنَّ خَلْقَهُ زَوْجَيْنِ الذِّكْرُ وَالْأُنْثَى. So, right in the creation was in pairs. It was never that there are men and then there are women or men. So, it is. I think this is very clear in this, that men and women, by virtue of creation, nobody has superiority over the other. My next verse, reference I'm going to give, is that both men and women are equal as human beings. We know in earlier lessons or earlier lectures we have described this, that every human child, when it's born, it is given what Allah has said nafakha min ruhana. God says that I have given every child a energy. Ruh is like divine energy to every child. So the child is born always with that divine energy. And then this is what Iqbal calls khudi or this is the nafs of the person, and the identity or the I mean, the Quran has you said nafs about it, and so this is called nafs. So this has to be developed, and that's where you need the wahi, and you get godly traits in you. So elsewhere it says that you can adopt Allah's color, means that whatever, if Allah is just, you can be just. If Allah is fair, you can be fair, like that. So here God has described equal abilities, and from the beginning till end, all the major abilities which human beings have, God has given both genders and said, and Muslimin wal Muslimat. The man can submit to Allah's doctrine. This is a Muslim who completely submits to Allah's doctrine, and so do women. So there is no priority or there is no superiority of one over the other. Well, Momineen or Mominat, and the men can completely conform to Allah's guidance, and so do women. Well, Khanateen or Khanatat, and the men can be fully compliant to Allah's guidance, and so can be the woman to Allah's guidance, and so can the woman be. وصادقين وصادقات وصابرين وصابرات وخاشعين وخاشعات. So these are all the traits of a moment, but there is absolutely, whatever the men do, same woman can do. The man can be truthful, the woman can be. The men can be patient and steadfast in pursuit of their objectives, so can the woman. And the men can be humble, so can be the woman. And the men stand by their commitments to Allah's guidance and give others to alleviate their needs. That's the meaning of Musaddaqat. So can the woman. And the men exercise self-control, or Saimin or Saimat. So can the woman. And the men follow Allah's guidance and stay chaste. So can be the woman. Hafidina farujahum wa hafiza. And the man can always remember Allah's guidance, so do the women. Al-Zakirin, Allah Kazira wa Zakirat. So in the end, God says that Allah promises that He will protect them both from ill effects in life, if any, and give them the great reward. Adallah lahum maghfara wa ajran azim. So the human self, which God has given everybody, can be developed by both of them, and they can all comply to all Allah's guidance and become what Allah wants you to become. It is not that men can do and women cannot do. So there is absolutely, all the verse continuously explains this, and God has given all the major traits of a woman, and God has used exactly the same word for men and women. So, and this verse from Surah Al Imran says, "Inni la atiqa amal amil minkum min zikrin wa untha." Allah says, "I shall not lose sight of the work done by any of you, who may be men or women." So Allah does not distinguish between the work of men or women. So it is exactly the same. Okay, women have the right to own property and keep their own earnings. So women, it is not that the men can only work. God said no. وَلَا تَتْمَنَّوْا مِنْ فَضْلِ اللَّهِ بِهِ بَعْضُكُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. Hence, do not expect that Allah will bestow His bounties more abundantly on some of you than the others. God is not going to give one party more and one party less. It is we in the society, we don't give women the right to earn the same amount, but it is not from Allah. God says, لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبٌ مِمَّا اكْتَسَبُوا وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبًا مَا اكْتَسَبْنَ. The men shall earn from what hard work they do, and the women shall earn from what they work hard for. So the thing is, it is woman's right to work and woman's right to earn just like it's men's right to work and men's right to earn. It is not that woman cannot work, woman should stay at home, woman should do this. If they stay at home, that is a separate subject, why they are staying at home. But it is not from God. God says if they work, they will have equal right to earn. And therefore, Allah, for His bounty, for the hard work that you do, as Allah indeed is full of knowledge in everything. وَأَسْأَلُ اللَّهَ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ عَلِيمًا. So, as far as working and earning is concerned, both parties can work and both parties will earn, and then it continues. Government. You see, real recently, of course, women like Benazir Bhutto came, and so some Prime Minister of Israel came, and Prime Minister of England came, and so some woman leadership appeared recently past. But otherwise, very rarely you find, although God has talked about Queen Bilqis in the Quran, but God says about men and women working together. It said, "Mominun wal mominat badhum awliya bad." The Momin men and Momin women who fully obey Allah's guidance are each other's close companions. They are each other's companions. It's not that one is superior to the other. When you are two companions, then both can do whatever. Yamuruna bil maruf wa yanhuna munkar. These words Allah has used repeatedly in the Quran for the Muslim state. That this is the job of Muslim state, is to tell people what is good and stop them from doing something wrong. This is like obedience, applying laws which Allah has given you, application of law and punishing somebody who breaks the law. This is the job of the government. So here God has said, this is all plural sense. So they together, here God has said that they are both each other's partners in the first part, and then it says, they together ensure enforcing what is right and forbidding others from doing what is wrong, as per Allah's guidance, of course. These are the duties of any government to enforce the law. That's the law is. And yuqimuna salata wa yutuna zakata wa yutuna Allah wa rasulahu. They work. See, this is where some of the religious people go on tangent. Yuqimuna salata is not just prayer. You say they work on a consistent path to follow up. See, salat is you follow up in Allah's guidance, whatever Allah has said consistently. Therefore, salat is for 24 hours. It is not at a time. It is for all the time that you should follow this consistently on the path of Allah and provide financial support for the welfare and growth of others. And giving zakat is not once a year in Ramadan, 2%. Zakat means to give for growth of others. So the state which is working together, they together follow the path and they provide for the needs of others. وَيَطِيعُونَ اللَّهَ وَرَسُولَهُ. And they follow. This is again, there is a confusion here, because people say, oh, Allah is following, we can do by the Quran, and Prophet, how to follow Prophet? Therefore, we need books of Hadith so that we can follow. That's not correct. See, Prophet guidance is given by Allah only. Allah is the one who has given us the Quran, and Prophet Muhammad has done interpretation of the Quran and applied in the society as a Rasul. He brought the message as a Nabi, and then he applied that message as a Rasul in the human society and formed the first Islamic government in Medina, what we talk about. And therefore, the interpretation of that has to be done according to the time at that time. And that's what Prophet was doing. And then, of course, after Prophet were the Khalifas. So, because they are Khalifat al-Rasul, they are following the Rasul in doing the same thing. And that is how evolution of the society took place. Otherwise, we'll be still sitting in the desert in tents. Society evolved on those principles which Allah has given, but continuously scientific research was done and we developed. And this is how the Islamic government work. And this Yatiyullah or Rasul, when it's combined, means this is what the state will do. Then it says that these are the people that Allah will bestow His grace on. Verily, Allah is Almighty and Wise. Allah Kasir Rahmum, Allah in Allah Azizul Hakim. So, same thing like we are together, have to form the government or do everything together. Similarly, if there's something goes wrong, then the deterrent should be the same as well. For example, it says, Sarek wa Sareka Waqtahu Edahuma. Of course, we say this is cut the hand of the thief, male or female. So the man who steals and the woman who steals, cut off their hands. The point is not cutting off the hand, because it says in the next continuation, it says, Jazan bima kasaba nakala min Allah wazirul hakim. And as a consequence of what they have done, this is a deterrent. The point is that the source with which they stole, that should be the reason why they stole it, should be stopped. Then they will not steal it. There is a very famous story about Hazrat Umar, that there was some farmer who came and said that these my workers they ate my my camel. And Hazrat Umar asked them, why did you eat his camel? And they say, because we are his workers and he doesn't give us wages on time. So we were hungry, we had nothing to eat, so we ate the camel. So Hazrat Umar said to this farmer that if you next time you don't pay them wages and they cut your camel, then you are the one who will be punished, not they. So the issue is not why somebody is stealing, you have to see and you have to stop that. But nevertheless, here the point is a little different, that the punishment will be the same, it will be male or female, it doesn't matter. The benefits are the same and the punishment is the same. Then if you come to inheritance, for example, because there is a big issue, hue and cry, that God says give twice as much to men as women. And the women have half the men's rights. Actually, this is not quite so. It is, you have to understand the point of view and then you can see, I'll show you. First of all, in Surah Baqarah, God has said in 180 that it is mandatory for everybody that when death approaches one of you, and if you are leaving behind your wealth, you should make a will. First of all, you should make a will. You know who needs more, who needs less, whose needs are there. So these words are very strong. Kutaba alaikum ala hazrahakum. Now, this kutaba alaikum is the same language which God has used when, for example, fasting. Kutaba alaikum as-siyam, when it says. So we take it so dearly. Oh, we have to fast because Allah has ordained on us. How about this one? And this, our religious, at least in Sunni fiqh, the way Pakistan practices or Middle East practices, they say, no. Prophet said, you cannot do this to your family. And here it says, lil walidain wal aqrabin bil maruf, that you must do it for your parents and for your near ones, your children or your brothers or sisters, whoever is near you. And it should be announced, bil maruf, it should not something which is hidden. Haqqan ala muttaqin, and this is absolutely necessary for the people who consider themselves muttaqi. For your parents and near relatives, it should be very well known. It is a duty upon the followers of Allah's guidance. So first of all, for inheritance, there should be a will, and that will decide who gets what. In Surah, so yeah, both men and women get part of inheritance. It could be parents or close relatives. Then, this is the next verse. It says, this is also from Surah Al-Baqarah. It says, لِلرِّجَالِ نَصِيبًا مَّمَّا تَرَكَ الْوَالِدَانِ وَالْأَقْرَبُونَ وَلِلنِّسَاءِ نَصِيبٌ مَّمَّا تَرَكَ الْوَالِدَانِ وَالْأَقْرَبُونَ مِمَّا قُلَّ مِنْهُ وَكَثُرَ نَصِيبًا مَفْرُوضًا. For man is a share of what the parents their parents and close relatives leave. And for women, there is a share of what their parents and close relatives leave. Be it little or much, this is obligatory. So this is mafruda. So the thing is, to deny anybody inheritance is wrong, and they should be given through a will. Of course, subsequently it says, after paying the will, if there is something left over, what to do. So God has given additional guidance in this. So the inheritance which we always talk about, verse 410 and 411, is only for wealth left over after paying the will. So it is not all what is there, so you must make a will. Now, here it says, Yusikum Allah fi aladukum, only for your children. It is not a general rule, it is only for your children. للذكر مثل حظ الأثنين. Allah instructs you concerning your children, for the male what is equal share of two females. Now, why male more amongst children than female? Because elsewhere, we will talk about that later on, the men of the society are supposed to provide for the women of the society, because the women spend time raising children. So the men have to provide for themselves as well as those ladies who are rearing children. So their expenditure is more, and therefore God says that whatever is left over from your wealth or from the will, then you give to the children, boys twice the girl. So, for example, it continues. It says that there's other details I will not go into, but the Arabic, the left part, I will say, red one. And for one's parents, each one of them is sixth. Now, if it is for parents, they are equal. So it is not that for mother is less and father is more. So it is not a gender bias. It is not for women less and men more. It is only in case of the next generation, it says that it should be given that way. If you continue, I said this is due to distribution of labor prescribed. Similarly, the next verse it says that there's this particular case, what they call kalala, when you have neither children nor parents. So it goes to brothers and sisters. And then again it says, Fil kul wahid minhuma al sudus. So if it goes to brothers and sisters, again it is 1/6. So if the inheritance goes laterally, or if it goes upward, then it is both are equal. Only for children, because for the coming years they have to live a life where they will have families and they will have rearing children, and so therefore they have more expenditure. It is only for the coming generations where God has said that this, and there is a reason for it, the way I understand it. Okay, the next subject where there's a lot of discrimination between men and women is marriage and divorce. So I'll go one step at a time. The first thing is, marriage is by choice. There is no compulsion. It says, "Fankahu mataba lakum minan nisa." Marry the one you like of woman. So it is absolutely no compulsion in marriage. So first of all, no compulsion. Second thing is, it says, marry the woman, al nisa. Therefore, there is no child marriage. You can only marry a woman and not a female. Here, the word is not a female; it is a woman. Maturity of age is a must. Otherwise, she is not a woman. The hadith about Prophet marrying Hazrat Aisha at the age of 6 years is therefore completely false, because Aisha, nobody at 6 years is a woman. It's a child. So the Prophet cannot go against direct instruction of God. Now, another interesting thing is, there is a verse that only marry those who are not already married. So you can only marry single woman. فَأَنْكَهُ الْأَيَامَ مِنْكُمْ. The one who are single, marry the single amongst you and the righteous among you. And the thing is, for marriage, your partner you should choose which are not just anybody, but who have good values. And it continues to say that they could be from your slaves if they are good, or female slaves if they are good, should marry them. And don't worry if they are poor. In Yakuna Fukra, God says, don't worry if they are poor, but if they are good, you can marry slave. Now, of course, slavery is banned subsequently in Islam, in Quran. So we can't have any more slaves. So whatever slavery was practiced by Muslims for 1,000 years was completely against Quran. But that's a separate subject. But the thing is, so here the word ayama has been used, means who are single, who are alone. You should marry them. Minkum or from Minabadakum. Okay. Now, man cannot marry against the consent of the woman. La yahilla lakum in tarthu nisa karhan. It is not lawful for you to marry woman by compulsion. So, if a woman doesn't agree to marry you, you can't marry her. So, consent of both of them is necessary. So, I have written a note here that consent of woman in marriage is compulsory, as marriage is a contract. God has used the word uqda, which means agreement or contract. And a contract can only be valid if both parties understand the contract and are willing to sign it. Otherwise, it will not be a valid contract. So, a marriage is not a marriage which is done under compulsion and where the both parties do not freely agree. Here, nowadays, maybe things are better, but traditionally, the girls was never given a chance. Parent will select. Even nowadays in Pakistan, I'm sure, parents will select and they force it on their daughters, at least in most villages and our societies. Another very important thing is do not marry if you cannot carry the burden of marriage. Well, yastafif allazina la yajiduna nakahan. Let them who find not the means to support and sustain family abstain from marriage until Allah enriches them from His bounty. Hatta yaghnahum Allah min fadlihi. So the expenses of life in a married household, in a married family life, generally speaking, the primary responsibility is that of man, because women have to take care of children and they cannot, of course they are allowed to work if they can. If they have no children, they are, of course they can work, they can participate in household. If they're not married, of course they can work and they should work. So it is not that it is mandatory that woman should not work because she is at home. No, woman can also work, but elsewhere it says that it is absolutely critical that you must take care of the children correctly, because that is the next generation. And children to maturity, it takes them many, many years, and they need a lot of time spent with them. So therefore, you cannot work. So therefore, the husband has to cater for their needs, and therefore he should marry only if he can carry the burden of marriage. If he cannot, he should not say that, oh, my wife has money, so I will just loiter with her, things like this. Anyhow, that is not the concept Allah has given. The other choice has man can only marry another woman if he divorces his first wife. If he has a wife and he is not happy with her, of course, he can divorce her and he can marry another one. So you can't say that, oh, I'm not happy with her, therefore I'm going to marry another one. So this one I will just keep it in a backyard and this one I will live with. So it says, in Rattum Stabdal Zoj Makan Zoj. If you want to replace your wife with another, if, and even if you have given her a great amount in gifts, you do not take back anything. So this is another subject, but related, that if you have whatever you have given, when you divorce her, you don't take anything back from her. But the point I had mentioned here, because this is tabdal zaj makan zaujan, means changing the wife instead of another. So multiple marriages are therefore not allowed. Men can only have one wife at a time. The only conditional exception is described hereunder. There is one exception, and that I'm going to talk about right now. This is again, I told you or mentioned earlier that when we were discussing Ya ayyuhan nas ittaqu rabbakum huwa allazi khalaqakum nafsan wahidatin, the first verse of Surah Al-Nisa. Now this is the second verse of Surah Al-Nisa, and there is a third verse of Surah Al-Nisa. There, God has said that you must take care of the uterine relations. And then here it's saying, it is actually, keep that verse in mind, and then you continue. If you read all of them together, it makes much more sense. Then you say, of course, it can happen that parents can die, children are left alone. So what do you do? Then it says, Atu yatama malun. You don't take over their wealth or their money or whatever they had. And give the orphans their properties, and do not substitute the defective of your own and the good of theirs, and do not consume their wealth as your own. Indeed, that is ever a great sin. So, because God said that these are all uterine relations, so you are born from a single cell and you're all together as humanity, as one nation, what I say. So, here it says that you have to take care of the orphans because you just cannot abandon them or take over their wealth. The next verse is, which is the most misunderstood, and it is continuation of this verse. Is talking about the orphans, and we start with in khiftum. See, here God says you should take care of their wealth justly. It says that in khiftum, in case you fear or you that Allah taqsatu fi yatama, in case you have children or left alone, destitute, you can't take care of them. Then you can marry those women whose children these are, and then you can take care of them. This is what, if you look at the Islamic history, that's what happened with Prophet Muhammad. He married many women, but they were all divorcees or widows. And if you fear that you will not deal justly with the orphans, then marry those women who you like, 2 or 3 or 4. But if you fear that you will not be just with them, then marry only one. So the issue is that this is in context of taking care of orphans, and there is no other means available to take care of them. Because if, for example, if there is SOS villages and you can have these children grow up in SOS villages, then this condition of in khiftum doesn't apply, because you will take care of the yatama. So therefore, there is no chance of getting marrying somebody. So it is marriage more than one is not because you can't have children for the first wife, or you like somebody prettier, or you want to have one in London and one in Pakistan and one somewhere else. This is not the reason for marrying. So if the word if is very critical here, it says if means are available to take care of children, then multiple marriages are of course not allowed. Then you take care of children. In today's world, it is responsibility of the state to take care of all citizens, and therefore they must provide ways and means that all orphans are taken care of by orphanages or adoption by family members or any other amicable means such as foster parents. So in today's world, there is absolutely no ground for multiple marriages. Because the if condition is applied, then you can fairly take care of the orphans. So, in my opinion, according to Quran's guidance, multiple marriages are absolutely not allowed in today's world. In some jungles of Africa, where there's, or in Amazon somewhere, or where there is no society, there's no developed society. Yes, you can say that there is no developed society, so how to take care of this? But in most of the 90% of the world, developed world, there is always places for taking care of orphans, and this is the responsibility of the state. That is the whole point of forming a state. We are not living tribal society. This is society run by the state, and they must provide for it. That's how I feel that what Quran's guidance is in this. Then the next issue is divorce. Of course, divorce is allowed. Both men and women can ask for divorce. It's not like that the men can and women take hula. This is what the typical Pakistani style is. Here, it doesn't say men or it doesn't say woman in Surah Baqarah 227. In Azamul Talaq, inna Allah Samir Ali. And if you intend to divorce, then indeed Allah is hearing and knowing. That means that everybody, male or female, they can ask for a divorce. So the other very important thing is there is no singular divorce that a man says talaq, 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 and divorce. The divorce has to be decided by and declared by the representative of the state. However, God has given a process. And this process in Surah Nisa 35, it says, In khiftum shakak bainahuma. And if you, the society, feared dissension between two of them, appoint an arbitrator from his side and an arbitrator from her side. If they both agree to reconciliation, Allah will reconcile between them. Indeed, Allah is ever knowing and acquainted. So the first step is if you have, like in Isma Talaq, if anybody is thinking of Talaq, whatever is the reason, first step is that you should appoint Hakman min ahlihi wa Hakman min ahliha. Arbitrator from his side and arbitrator from her side, because they themselves cannot negotiate because they may be too much emotionally charged in whatever is their issue between them. But if somebody, their brother or sister or somebody else who they appoint, again it said an arbitrator. Now, if it can be a woman arbitrator, it doesn't have to be a male arbitrator. This is also, we have this problem. Anyhow, so because first preference is God does not want to break up the family. Therefore, it prefers that you should try to find a solution between the two. And that is the first order of business. Then it continues. There's one more condition here. This is only applicable to women. That if a wife fears cruelty, see, some of the men are aggressive, they are abusive. And if she feels cruelty or desertion on her husband's part, there is no blame on them if they arrange an amicable settlement between themselves. Only if a woman is threatened or beaten up or abused by the man in whatever way, the God said, say beat, but any kind of abuse, then she can take it. It is an exception to the divorce process. She can ask for a separation based on abuse, and then that has to be given. So this has to be done. And then the divorce is announced. It says it is talking to in Surah Talaq. It talks to first verse to Prophet Muhammad Ya ya Nabi, idha talaqtumul nisa. Prophet never gave divorce to any of his wives, but he was giving divorce to women. If you see the continuity of these verses, you will see that there some woman had come to Prophet Muhammad and for a divorce. So the God says that when you declare divorce for women, divorce them for their waiting period. The God has given again a process. So first of all, the divorce has to be given by the state or state representative, because this, if the negotiations, like mentioned here, from both sides, the arbitrators failed, for example, then of course a decision has to be made by the state, which is at that time Prophet represented the state. But eventually we have a system now, the courts represented. Prophet or his appointed representative or members of the state or a qadi or the judge used to declare the divorce in case of reconciliation efforts fail. It is not an individual act that a husband declares talaq 3 times and the woman is divorced, because it has to be done by the state authority, because the marriage also is a contract, and dismantling of the contract also has to be a procedural thing. So now here this is another additional concept has been given. When you declare for a woman divorce them for their waiting period. There's a idda concept has been described elsewhere also, that divorce a married woman you have to have a waiting period to make sure that she is not pregnant, something like that, or 3 month, three period natural cycle. So you have to wait for that to make sure that she is not carrying his child, whoever they are separating each other. So it is only you have to wait for this, and then you can finalize it. So when that period is over, فَإِذَا بَلَّغْنَ أَجْلَهُنَّ فَأَمْسَكُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ أَوْ فَأَرْكُوهُنَّ بِالْمَعْرُوفِ. And when they have fulfilled their waiting period, either retain them according to, because he may have change of mind, or she may have change of mind, or they may want to stay together, then either you should keep them or you let them go. So this is the process of divorce can only take place, elsewhere it says twice, because it's not that you divorce and then you get together again, and then you divorce and then you get together again, and you keep on doing that. God says that this can only be done twice, and then the third time if you do it, then there's no reconciliation allowed. Then the process you cannot reconcile. So this is the verse Surah Al-Baqarah says, Talaq marratan fa amsaka bimaruf wa tasrih bi ihsan. Divorce with the process can only be given twice. Then either keep her in an acceptable manner, or release her with good treatment to keep the balance in the society. Or tasrih bi ihsan. Ihsan means to keep the balance in the society. Hasana is to keeping the balance. It is not that you do it as a favor to her. No, because you can't have people who are unwilling to live together, forced to live together like that, or who are not willing to participate in anything that you force them. So to keep the balance in the society, you have to let her go. So in a way, divorce is a process. Both husband and wife can ask for it in case of incompatibility or other differences. In addition, women can ask for it in case of abuse. The state shall try to reconcile using arbitrators from both the families. If not possible, then 2 months waiting period will be given. At the end of this period, divorce is finalized, either resulting in reconciliation or in a separation. I think this 2 months is 3 months actually. This process could be repeated only twice. Third time, there will be no possibility of reconciliation. So it is a very balanced way. It is not in favor of one party or the other as we have taken it. And there is no concept of that the woman cannot divorce, they have to go to court for khula, and there is a big hullabaloo. In elsewhere in the in the divorce process, it has said clearly that you can uh, negotiate the financial settlement. That, for example, if a woman was the original starter of the divorce proceedings, and if the man says, "Oh, I have spent on you so much," or whatever, so if the woman wants to give up part of that, she can. But the starting of the process is equally available to both of them. Then, so that was marriage. Then the illicit relations, again, it says the punishment is the same for both men and women. I'm just talking about equal partners of men, women and men. Whatever applies to men also applies to women. So, for example, if they have the woman and the man found guilty of fornication or adultery, I had to use these two words, al zani or zania, because we have a big misconception that here zani means married man and zania, zania means married woman. This is not true. Anybody. When the Arabic language, you have to understand this, that if the word alif lam comes in the beginning of a noun, it means anyone. Al insan, khalaq al insan means any human being. When you generalize a common noun, you add a al in it, so it becomes general. So God says that you punish them for jaldu kul wahid minhuma mayat al jalda. So leash each one of them with 100 lashes, not to take pity on them for them in deen, because this is something not allowed and not right. So you can't just forgive them. Prescribed by Allah. If you believe in Allah and law of requital, and let a group of believers witness their punishment. So in punishment also, they are both um, they're both equal, exactly 100 lashes is not. So practicing good behavior is also equally mandated for both, firstly for men and then for women. So, for example, that was the bad behavior, but for good behavior, it says, Kullil Momineen Yakhdu min absarihim. God says, tell the believing men to lower their gaze and stay chaste. That is purer for them indeed. Allah knows what to do. Well, this is how it is mentioned in the Quran, means being stay chaste. Zalika aska lahum and Allah khabir wama yasnaun. You know. So then the next verse is the same words are used for Mominat. وَكُلِّ الْمُؤْمِنَاتِ يَغْضُضْنَ مِنْ أَبْصَارِهِنَّ يَحْفَظْنَ فُرُوجَهُنَّ. So, and tell the believing women to lower their gaze and stay chaste. They should. There is one more thing here. La yubaddina zinatahunna illa ma zahira minha. So, and they should not expose their adornment except that appears by itself. You see, the male's sex mind is very complicated, and even she may be walking somewhere and he may feel excited about it. So that's the problem with man. So woman cannot not start walking, that male will get confused, so I'm not going to walk. So what says whatever appears by itself, that is appears by itself. That man, that's why God has first told men to control their gaze. They have to watch out for how you think about others, how you behave. So, but here God said this word is very critical to the yadrubanna. Yadrubanna. This is from, we have a word called daraba, which elsewhere we say to hit somebody. Daraba means to hit. But here, God is telling the woman to hit themselves. Bihumrehunna ala jiyubehunna. No. Daraba, this is not the meaning of daraba to hit something. Yadrabanna is from the word daraba, meaning any intentional action to achieve the purpose. You have to intentionally cover your chest. Women have to make sure when they are dressing up, when they are going anywhere, they must make sure they should have a concerted effort. Whenever daraba is whenever a certain effort is done, then you use the word daraba. So God says, "Yadribuhunna bikhumurihunna." They make sure that their chests are covered with a covering so that their chest is not exposed. So this is a woman's responsibility and it has to be intentionally done. So it is the intentional action that they should consciously do. That's what it means. I know the time is running short, but there's only a few verses left. Now, this is the most critical verse. Always we are talking about it. And this is, I have clubbed two verses here. I say the most verses misinterpreted in favor of men. Now, we say husbands are rulers over wife, and they can even beat the wife. This is the meaning of this verse, how commonly interpreted, and I don't think that people are understanding it. You need to little bit think hard, then you can understand it if you see in the context. So I'll go through word by word. First of all, it says Ar-Rajal, Kawamun alal Nisa. It is not talking about husband and wife, my dears. Rajal, I have just said before that al of a common noun generalizes it. So the men, this is talking about the men in a society. See, Surah Al-Nisa, right from the beginning, is addressing the society. Ya ayyuhan nas. It started, the very first word was Ya ayyuhan nas attaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahidatin. So it started with all the humankind or all the humanity. So it is addressee is not husband, addressee is not wife, addressee is the men of a Muslim society. Of course, these rules are for a Muslim society. If you are living in a jungle like Pakistan, then you are living in jungle. So that what we behave or bad behavior which we so-called Muslims have does not mean that that is what Islam is. Here it is talking about the men of the society. Kama Rajal al Mara is the man provided for that woman. Kama means to provide for. So the basic rule God has said that men of the society must provide for the women of the society, bima fazlallah, because God has given them from their earnings. Since women are unable to earn when they bear and raise children, because they are busy raising children, so they are unable to earn. So therefore, the men have to provide for them. Now, if the husband is not there, husband died, you mean you leave the children alone? No, the society has to provide. Or if there's a divorcee with children, or her husband died. So the point is that the children have to be provided for. And so the righteous women devotedly follow their obligation and take care of what Allah would want them to take care of. فَصَالِحَاتْ قَانَتَانٍ حَافِظَاتٍ لِلْغَيْبِ بِمَا حَفِظَ اللَّهُ. So they have to take care of what God has provided them, and therefore they cannot go and earn. So the men of the society, Ar-Rajal, the men of the society have to provide for the women of the society. Now, there is an exception. What if the woman doesn't take care of the children? And if you, the society, fear defiance, she doesn't do what she is supposed to do. So God says, فَعُوذُهُنَّ. Firstly, the woman should be advised that your children are not taken care of, you are not, they are not going to school or they are whatever, depending on the society. So you have to first advise them. And if they still are loitering and going around and children are not taken care of, then it says for ahjaruhunna min masajid. Then then you can confine them to their house. So you don't they have to stay in their house to take care of their children. And you don't let them go out like a partial punishment, you can say, to make sure that they do what they're supposed to do in these circumstances where the husband or provider is not there and the children are being provided for by the woman, or the husband goes out earning and mother also goes out, and what to do with the children. So adrabuhunna. And ultimately, if they fail to fulfill their obligation of taking care of the children, you may have to forcibly take the responsibility away from them. Adrabuhunna means you have to force the act. Adrabah doesn't mean beat them up. I have explained to you before, even for covering the chest, God has used the same word. And I have a little bit explained below. Adrabu, this word has the root word dad rabe, has multiple meanings, such as to hit, of course, to strike. For example, if a company employees go on strike, doesn't mean they're beating somebody. But if you strike a man, that means you hit somebody. But if you go on strike, means that you have forcibly taken action that you are forcing the owners to do something. So, for example, to multiply, this is typing error, to cross-examine, also use the word daraba for cross-examine. To travel to reach a destination, that's also called darabal ard, means you travel and you're walking somewhere else. So to force things on, for example, income tax in Arabic is called dariba dakhal, that whatever is your income, you must give part of it to the government. Even customs is called dariba. So when you buy things bring from outside, there is a percentage the state wants to take. So that's dariba. Anything which is forcefully done, it is not beating only. Beating is only one meaning of this, but there are 50 meanings of the word daraba. So I don't know why we have taken always to mean it's because we have an internal superiority complex, because the woman has to be straightened out, so therefore she should be beaten. And they don't think that daraba means anything else. In my opinion, it means that you have to forcibly take action, either take the children away from that mother or do some other action, because the next part, it explains it very well. Because it says, however, should they follow the corrective advice? See, you should take action that they can come back to and correct themselves. Then do not seek any measure against them. So there should be your action should be such that she can take a corrective advice and come back. So you have to take action. The state will decide. And this is another which is very well misunderstood, is men are superior to women 1 degree. This verse 228 is about divorce. And God says, this is what I was saying 3 months. Here, it says, and the divorced woman shall undergo without remarrying a waiting period of 3 months. 3 monthly course. For it to be not lawful of them to conceal what God have created in their wombs. And if they believe in God at the last day, and during the period, their husbands are fully entitled to take them back if they desire reconciliation, but in accordance with justice. Thus, the rights of the wives are equal to that of the husband with regard to them. This is what it says. And the men, there is one advantage over the woman in this matter. This is for this matter only with respect to remarriage, because after the divorce, woman has to wait 3 months and then she can remarry. She cannot even propose somebody during that 3 month period. There are other verses. Whereas man is free to marry whoever he likes immediately after divorce. So only in that context, Allah has said that the man have advantage is only in the context of remarriage. And this is another issue. I'll try to do this. I'm running a little late. Uh, Woman witness, two women equal to one man. See, I will just read the English translation of the verse. And bring to witness two witnesses from amongst men. This is regarding a contract. God says, if you are signing a contract, you must have two men witnesses. Then, if you can't have two, then says one man and two women. And there it describes why that if one of the women, while giving a witness later on in a dispute, is perplexed, then the other can remind her. But if she is not perplexed, then she will not remind her. So the two witnesses are not there, it's still one witness. But in that society, the women were not going to courts for standing in witnesses in disputes. They were not, elsewhere, God has mentioned that you have not taught your women correctly. You have just put them as house idols covered with jewelry and they're sitting all day at home. You have not given them the proper training. So the women maybe are not used to working. Even now in a Pakistani village or Pakistani, you can't tell the woman to go in a court full of men and judges and all this who are cross questioning them and they can freely, openly answer them without education. So this is not the two witnesses. Thus, if she is not perplexed and is sure of her statement, then only one will give witness and not two. For men also, it says two men. So this is for the same reason, because in case one doesn't remember, the somebody else can advise. The other issue is men's reward in heaven. It says that, oh, the men will get the hur, the most beautiful woman with big eyes. So this how this verse is translated. Thus will give them company of selected people. First of all, it is not saying men. It is talking about whoever goes to heaven. And they will be paired with the best of the woman, the best of the people. So thus will give them company of selected people who are the best amongst the lot, just as Jesus was given the company of discipline. The Jesus disciples in Quran has called them Havari. This is the same word as Hur. I have described below that Hur does not mean woman. It is the plural word and has singular for male, Ahvarun, and a singular for female, Hora, and therefore can be applied to both genders. This has many meanings. Best amongst the lot makes more sense in this context. And Ain also does not mean woman with big eyes. It is also a plural word and has singular male, Ainun, and a singular female, Ana. It also has many meanings. So one of them is people who have clean intellect. Lane, in his lexicon, has used the word clean intellect. So what God is saying that in heaven, your partners or people who you will be living with or you will be there with, you will be people who are best amongst the lot, just like Havari of Hazrat Isa, and will be people with clean intellect because the rubbish will never reach heaven. So, so this is the last of this. You should always remember no gender preference in the eyes of Allah. Both genders are equal because God says, وَلَقَدْ كَرَّمْنَا بَنِي Adam, and we have certainly honored all the human beings. And so God says, فَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَى وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَى. So whoever does an atom's weight of good will see it, And whoever does an atom's weight of evil will see it, or means get punished. So then, this is the last of this series. It says, Man yamil min salihat, man zakar wa unsa, wa huwa mu'min, fa ulaika yadkhuluna jannah wa la yadhlimuna nakhira. And whoever works constructively, whether male or female, while being a moment, will enter paradise, will not be wronged even as much as a speck. Thank you very much.